Good Monday. Welcome into the Tennessee Pro Football Podcast. I'm Chris Yao, joined by Terry McCormick, and we are here coming to you live from Middle Tennessee. Happy to have you guys with us, and got a big show planned. Going to be a lot of fun as we get ready for probably one of the more, Terry, would you say angry shows or disappointing shows?
I think there's a lot of emotions to process if you're a Titans fan here, because you look at the result of yesterday's game against an Indianapolis team that was certainly not at full strength, missing their quarterback, missing their star running back, had a couple of receivers who were hobbled all week, and then all of a sudden each one of them catches a touchdown against you. There's plenty of frustration to go around here in Tennessee.
No question, but we do have, of course, as always, we've got bringing you some of the best guests from around the National Football League. Today, no different. We have the legendary Charles Davis joining us. Looking forward to having a conversation with him, Terry, here in just a moment. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Blaine Kellar will join us in this next segment as well, so you guys make sure to stick around. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, Charles, Blaine, both will join us. Stick around here on the Tennessee Pro Football Podcast, back in 30 seconds.
Being a part of a cooperative is being a part of something bigger. Farm Credit Mid-America is a customer-owned lender that specializes in agricultural financing for farm real estate, operating, and farm equipment. A unique benefit of being a part of the Farm Credit Mid-America Cooperative is our patronage program, which has put over $1 billion back in our customers' hands over the last 7 years. That's the power of a cooperative. Visit us at fcma.com to learn more.
I own the land.
I farm the land. Together we're farmers. This is our cooperative.
Welcome in.
Oh, there he is. We're all in different places. How about that? I'm Chris Yao.
Like a Brady
Terry's on the far left. Charles in the middle. We got this figured out now. And we of course, welcome in Charles Davis. And Blaine Kellar is going to join us. So, Blaine, we'll let you hop in as well. But thanks for joining us, Charles.
Well, thanks for having me, and I appreciate it very much. I didn't know if we were doing the Brady Bunch shuffle there, which gives away my age and my vintage, that's for sure, because I know young people are like, what are you talking about? But if you were around and, what do they say now? Google it, you'll figure it out. Or I guess I could go, who's in the center square right now? Because usually it was Paul Lynn back in the day. And again, you Google it, all right? Because I'm an old man, and that's just how it is. Hope everyone.
You're talking my language there, Charles. Brady Bunch, Hollywood Squares, love it.
Yeah, Terry, if I go on too long, Gene Rayburn will come out with that long microphone, and we'll be, the long thin one.
Yes.
And we'll be doing match game, and no one leered better than Gene Rayburn when he would do the match game thing, and it had the innuendo for the 70s.
Oh, no doubt about it.
And give you the Norman Fell Three's Company, break the fourth wall, and yeah, he was good. Anyway, sorry, Blaine. We were wasting your time with a bunch of old people stuff. All right.
Oh, Charles, I think Terry had a big question for you to start off here. Of course, you spent a lot of time covering this team in the preseason.
Yeah.
Terry, I'll let that question lead itself to what kind of happened after that to the product we're at now.
Charles, I know that, with a new offense under Brian Callahan that the Titans are implementing, there were going to be some growing pains. There's going to be some things that, a process that has to be gone through for Will Levis and this offense. But what I want to know is, where is the Will Levis that we saw last year that was full of fire, full of emotion, not afraid to let it rip? Yesterday, 95 yards passing. That's not going to get it done unless you're handing it off to Derrick Henry and letting him run for 200. Well, newsflash, he's in Baltimore these days.
Yeah, it's very strange when you see the numbers. And, I will have to I just want to make sure off the top, I was on a red eye last night, come back from Las Vegas. And I had a game myself, so I didn't see the game, but you see the numbers, and I was kind of tracking a little bit to see where it was. Here's the score, 10-7 Titans, And this was a game that I thought they really had a great shot at. And frankly, with everything coming at us with news, I thought Anthony Richardson was going to play for Indianapolis. And it turned out to be Joe Flacco. And the weird part is you're almost thinking, oof, that darn Flacco. He does things, and you mentioned it off the top, you and Chris, about the injuries that they have. Jonathan Taylor's not going. It's a little bit of a surprise. Pittman was able to go, that sort of a thing. But let's get back to Will Levis and crew. If we have not figured out, and I know you guys have, but if we don't as fans figure out that what you see in the preseason, you better take with the best grain of salt, because preseason is not the deal. You don't know what other teams are throwing at you, how many people they truly play, which is usually almost no one, situations that you're in. And Will and the guys who in their limited playing time, which was more than most people did with starters, they did some really good things and they looked the part. And you mentioned, Terry, the fire that you saw from him last year and what have you. Sometimes, and this is just one of those outside observers without knowing everything, so I'm going to be very general about it. Sometimes when you take over that role and you're going into something with a new coach and what have you, you may feel like you need to go at it differently than you did before. Maybe, you may have to have a different persona. You're the guy. And, Will took on being QB1 and he took it very seriously. And I say that with admiration. Whenever a guy was signed as a free agent, first text was going to come from Will Levis. Whoever the draft pick was, the first text was going to be Will Levis welcoming him into the family. He wanted to assume those things and be that person, and I think there's nothing but applause for that. The next part, though, is you have to translate that to play. And we had the Jets game. My crew had the Jets game. And we saw the things now that, unfortunately, as you guys know, you turn on a national talk show, you turn on a national TV show. If something crazy happens, Jordan Love 2 weeks ago, remember that throw he made from the end zone that turned to a pick six? What was the first thing that was said around the country?
Looked like Will Levis.
Throw. Yeah.
He pulled a Will Levis. Wow, that happened fast. That's the stuff that has to go out. That has to be corrected. Brian Callahan, of course, doesn't teach it. Coach it, condone it. It's just a weird time frame. Can it? Yes, it can. Absolutely. The talent's there. He takes this, as I mentioned, seriously. He wants to be great. He is very serious and what I think is a very overused word right now. He's very intentional about what he wants to do right now. But everything has to come together for him, and it's just not at this time. He's going through that struggle. And I'll stop here because I'm on this crazy monologue, and I don't mean to. As a golfer, and I'm not a great golfer, but I used to be in the golf business, golf world. What do they tell you about your swing? The harder you try as a golfer, the worse it's going to get. And right now, I feel like Will Levis is gripping that club really tight.
See, I agree with you 100% because I think the fiery, fun Will Levis, I think you can't completely take that out of your game, whether the coaching staff is trying to do that or whether he's doing that himself. And the example I'll give you is Baker Mayfield. When Baker Mayfield was in Carolina, not having any fun, he was not a good quarterback. He goes to Tampa, gets a new lease on life. He's having fun. He's throwing the ball all over the field. He's a top 10 quarterback. So I think Will Levis could watch some of that and learn because he has some of that same swagger that Baker Mayfield has to have in his game. I think Will needs some of that back in his.
It's a great call, Terry. And I think that part of it, too, is maybe Will is going through what Baker had to go through. And what Baker went through was at a certain point, he was trying not to make mistakes, which wasn't Baker at all. Like he went through that. Plus, Baker played hurt that 1 year in Cleveland and never got credit for it. All he got was blame. He's playing with a really bad shoulder. He was doing things he probably shouldn't have been on the field. But, Baker's old school. Hey, if I can crawl out there, I can play. I got to lead my team. And it didn't work. He leaves Cleveland. Took him a while to catch his footing. It doesn't work well in Carolina, as you mentioned. He has that big that Thursday nighter in Los Angeles, I think, which did a lot to revive who he is and what his career was. Remember, he came off the plane and he was in town less time than Kirk Herbstreit and Al Michaels, who were broadcasting the game, has the big game. and off he goes, right? Kind of gets his mojo back. And now I watched him yesterday on a highlight. He took off on a run, and you know what went through my head? Oh, yeah, that's Baker because he's running angry. Because Baker Mayfield wakes up angry. Baker Mayfield gets breakfast angry. Baker Mayfield, there's always an edge to him, and that's what makes him who he is. So to your point, Terry, you can't take it all out of you. You have to know how to harness it, but you can't take it all out of you. And maybe that's what Will's going through. He might be going through that time frame Baker did to try and get back to who he is. All I know is that in this league, you got to get back sooner rather than later. It's just the way the league works. You've got to get back there sooner than later.
Yeah, Charles, I looked at that Baker stat line yesterday. He had the 3 interceptions, but 4 touchdowns, and Tampa Bay scored 50 points. And I think that goes back to just letting Baker be Baker and letting Will be Will. But I had this question for you. Of course, storied career at Tennessee. You got the helmets behind you there as a defensive back. Have you had some time to kind of assess how these defensive backs have played in Denard Wilson's defense? Jarvis Brownlee, somebody who's come on late these last 2 games, and of course, L'Jarius Sneed and Quandre Diggs are the big names there.
Listen, what Denard Wilson coaches, preaches, they grasped onto very quickly. You guys are there, right? You get to see it even more than I did, even though I was around a decent amount in preseason. Some people are able to sell their message very quickly, and it really fits who they are. Plus, Denard Wilson is not asking these guys to play a type of defense that doesn't work for them. That's good coaching, right? Denard wants to be a pressure guy. He wants to be a man-to-man guy. But I will guarantee you my last dollar that if they couldn't do it and execute it, he wouldn't run it. He would run something that works because he's a good football coach. But that passion that he brings to the table, that fire he brings to the table, plus the message that he sold, they're all in. They have bought in, and they have not had like 2 or 3 games where they kind of flashed and then it fell apart. That defense continues to play well and play for him. And if you're a defensive back, look, Brownlee came out of Louisville, having been a Florida State guy, Louisville guy, which nowadays, I remember my vintage. If you mention a guy went to 2 schools, you ask, well, why did he go to 2 schools? What happened? Nowadays, they can go 3 or 4 schools, and we just shrug our shoulders. It's the way it is. It's just different nowadays. But he came out. Baker Mayfield carries a chip on his shoulder. Brownlee did too, because he thought, how did I go in the 5th round? I'm better than these guys, and he's played to prove it. And now you're seeing the fruits of the whole thing. Snead's a big-time player. I'll put it to you this way. I don't know if you guys ever talked with Steve Spagnuolo, the defense coordinator of Kansas City Chiefs, and I got to cover them a decent amount when L'Jarius was there. Spags has coached a lot of Super Bowl teams between the Giants and Kansas City. He told me the best nickel he ever had, the best nickel cover guy he ever had was L'Jarius Snead. Now, that goes a lot to me when Steve Spagnuolo says something like that.
Well, absolutely. He had a little bit of a rough day yesterday, but by and large, he is their go-to guy. And I love Brownlee. He is maybe my favorite of the rookies in terms of, because he just came in and you could see right away he belonged on the field. You could just see it.
Terry, Brownlee's the guy that doesn't need an invitation to the fight.
No, you're exactly right.
He doesn't need an invitation. He just hears, like, think about when we were kids and those little dust-ups that happened in the schoolyard. And how did everyone know what was going on? You'd hear someone, it's kind of like Ryan Gosling's character in Remember the Titans. Fight! And everybody came running. We came running to circle and see who was fighting. Brownlee comes running to throw. Like, hey, I'm in. Who am I fighting? Just point them out. That's
no doubt
you want. That's who he is.
What do you make of the whole situation with Calvin Ridley yesterday? I mean, couldn't get on the same page with Will Levis the entire game, 0 for 8 in targets. Yeah. It's been something that's been a hit and miss all season long, mostly miss. And I guess Calvin Blaine was there, while I was interviewing Callahan. Blaine was in the locker room and he caught up with Ridley, and Calvin would kind of voice some of his frustrations. When you're losing, how do you rein that in and keep that from festering and becoming a problem.
It's a tough one. And Blaine, you had him yesterday. This is what I gleaned from what I saw. Tell me if I'm even close to it. That he did take some responsibility, that he didn't play well. But there's always a good but, right? But I need to be involved early. Name a receiver that we know that's a pretty legit guy that doesn't say, you better involve me early. They all say it. They all feel it. They all count on it. We had Houston and Buffalo a couple weeks ago. The Stephon Diggs game. Here comes Buffalo. First thing we said was, God, that first pass better go to Stephon Diggs. You better. And by the way, Houston acknowledged it. Like, it wasn't like it was some major series. Like, yeah, we better get him involved pretty early on this whole thing. I had Pittsburgh, Las Vegas yesterday. This is how, and there's a point to all this, guys. George Pickens from Pittsburgh, we all know is uber talented, but he's had his share of issues, right? That Monday night game against Dallas, 3 catches, 26 yards. He grabs the guy with the face mask and pulls him down at the end of the game. His father comes out and blasts the coaching staff on social media. But by the way, that's 2024. Like, we see it all the time where parents and other people get involved talking about coaches. It's a weird phenomenon, but it exists. This is how it is with receivers. So Pittsburgh throttles Las Vegas yesterday, right? They've got full control of this game. It's 29-13. There's less than 4 minutes to go. All you got to do is run the ball and what have you. You know what Pittsburgh did? They throw a bomb to George Pickens. And it was for one reason and one reason only, to make sure he is involved, active. And look, as 4 minutes go in the game, you think, okay, we're cool here. But they're trying to let him know, we still want to get you to football. And by the way, after they threw the bomb and he made an incredible catch, do you know what they did the very next play? They threw it to him in the end zone. 13. Now, they weren't trying to run it up. They weren't trying to – Arthur Smith, you guys know him quite well. He's the OC. I'm quite sure he's on the headset with Mike Tomlin, like, hey, we got to do what we can to make sure George is involved because we got more games to go. This is how you have to think with the top receivers. It's a different world than other positions where you're just like, hey, dude, just play the position when the ball will find you, or, you know, all that kind of stuff that we use. They look at you like you're crazy. No. Make the ball find me. And then I can be a better player for you. And they've really come at it from a feeling of, if you involve me early, I'm helping the team. If you don't involve me early, you're not helping the team. They don't see it as a selfish thing. And that's the thing that we have to keep in mind as a public, that they don't come at it like, well, I got to have my catches because it's in my contract. They're not saying that. They're really saying, if you give me the ball, I will make plays and help the team, but I really need it early so I stay interested.
Charles, great stuff. Great stuff there. What game you got next week?
We are in D.C. getting to see Jaden Daniels, who's just
nice.
And Carolina goes to play them, so that's going to be fun.
Nice.
Real treat for you, yeah.
And people can catch you here in Nashville on 104.5 The Zone on Coach Doug Matthews' show on Saturdays as well, talking college football in the Vols.
That's right. Hey, the Vandy Flash, Coach Matthews, SEC Player of the Year. That was my guy.
All right, Charles, thanks so much for doing this. We appreciate your time.
We'll take a break here on the Tennessee Pro Football Podcast. Chris Yao, Terry McCormick, and Blaine Kellar coming back with you after the break.
He shoots, and he scores!
Welcome back into the Tennessee Pro Football Podcast. Chris Yao, Blaine Kellar, Terry McCormick here, and We have got about 10 minutes left. We've got the stock report coming your way here in a moment and stat stuffers. But guys, just, let's talk about just overall thoughts from yesterday as the Colts come in here and really still won.
Yeah, I think that everybody out there felt like this was a game that the Titans would win, should win, and then yet they did not find a way to win. And, some of this I got to put on, and I don't know if you call it the game plan or if you call it the decision making, because the passing part of the offense was just so conservative. It almost felt like that they were afraid to let Levis loose, afraid that he would make a costly mistake, that they were willing to run the football and try to, salt away a win the same way that they did in Miami against a team that was depleted. And I just feel like it kind of blew up in their face because they spent 53 minutes of the game playing conservative on offense. And then once they lost the lead early in the fourth quarter or midway through the fourth quarter, then all of a sudden it's like, okay, go win us the game. And at that point, there wasn't much hope for it.
Guys, they were willing to run the ball whenever they let the guy who ran the ball for them last year walk in free agency and find another team. And I know we'll get to our stat stuffers in a second, but take a look at this one. Derrick Henry leading the league with 704 rushing yards. Will Levis has 699 passing yards this season.
That's right.
Yeah, that's, and yesterday, and we'll say, I'll save this for the stat stuffers, but just no shots taken downfield. We will get into that more with the stats.
Yeah, and as a strictly a fan, I mean, obviously you guys cover the team. You're there on a daily basis a lot of times, and you're obviously there at home games and sometimes road games. And Terry, we appreciate that. But just as someone who has to watch this thing on television and has barely any knowledge of this complete and utter disaster of a franchise, it feels like at times, you look at the offseason, $200 million, you look at the going and getting Brian Callahan, and you just feel like, how did this team go get an offensive guru supposedly and spend $200 million on weapons and get significantly worse on the offensive side of the football than under Todd Downing and
Tim
Kelly and Mike Vrabel's staff? It blows my mind. It blows my mind. I can't answer the question. Maybe you guys can, but it's insane how that's even possible.
No, I don't think you're off base there at all. I think that you've hit on the question that everybody's looking for an answer to, is why isn't this offense any better? Now, some of that I can lay at the feet of the offensive line. They did play a little better yesterday, did not allow a sack for the first time in nearly 3 years. But when you're averaging less than 4 yards a pass attempt, you shouldn't get sacked because the ball's coming out of your hands, the quarterback's hands very quickly, and it's not going very far. So to me, they've got to take the training wheels off of Levis and just let him go. Let him, like I was talking about with Charles, and we were talking about the Baker Mayfield analogy. Let him be him. The mistakes are going to happen. The mistakes are happening anyway.
I was going to say, what do you have to lose?
You're 1-4. You've got 2 rough road games coming up against 2 of the better offenses in the league. You're not holding those teams to 17 points, and you're scoring 17 points every week yourself. So why not take the training wheels off and say, throw it 40 times and let's see what happens. Maybe you'll hit a couple of touchdowns. Yeah, a couple of balls are probably going to get picked, but maybe you can do some of the things that you did last year.
The Titans are going to be 1-6 either way. I mean, staring down the barrel of Detroit and Buffalo, if you run that running style of offense with Tony Pollard and maybe Tajay Spears, given he's healthy, you're still going to be 1-6. So why not just try to let it loose? And honestly, I think that might be their best way of stealing a win from one of those two teams.
Let's get into the stat stuffers very quickly.
my stat stuffers are this: 95 yards passing. I think that kind of says it all. 16 of 27, 1 interception, 1 touchdown. The thing of it is, when the Titans had the lead, before the Titans lost the lead, he was 13 of 17 for 72 yards. So it was working exactly the way they had hoped it would in a low-scoring game up until the Colts took the lead. Then after that, when they were forced to go to the air on those last 2 drives and then that last play with 12 seconds left, 3 of 10, 23 yards. So that's pretty rough. That's less than 4 yards per carry, or per attempt, I should say. And then, of course, Calvin Ridley, 8 targets, no catches, at least 1 drop, and probably 2 or 3 other catchable balls that he couldn't come up with.
Yeah, going back to what Charles said here briefly, Calvin, after his kind of expletive sound off on not getting early targets, he said, "It is what it is, but I suck today. I got to be better, but I got to get the ball a little earlier in the game so I can be in the game." So some questions about utilization early on in this part of the season, and now questions about not getting the ball early enough for Calvin Ridley.
Let's take a look at the stock report.
Terry, I'd say that Jarvis Brownlee stock continues to rise each week that he gets playing time at cornerback. He had 2 first-half pass deflections against Joe Flacco and the Colts and had an interception called back for illegal contact in the end zone against Adonai Mitchell. He played really well as part of that secondary yesterday.
He's showing that it's not too big for him as a rookie. He's definitely showing that he belongs. He's one of the few guys that I can give an actual stock up to. Maybe him and maybe Tony Pollard. That's about it. Everybody else is, the stocks are down, buy low.
Well, you mentioned A.D. Mitchell, and how cool was that for him to get a chance to play at Nissan Stadium in his hometown? That's always fun. It's just cool when those guys get a chance. It's awesome. So
yeah, that Cane Ridge product getting the opportunity after playing at Texas, I believe, and then another
he
cool
was at Georgia and then Texas.
Yeah, and Brent Stockstill, something we noticed on the Colts coaching staff, former MTSU quarterback, defensive assistant for the Colts and that team. So a couple of homecomings at Nissan Stadium yesterday.
Then of course, Lincoln, I think it's Lincoln County, Jim Bob Cooter.
Yeah.
The Colts offensive coordinator.
Oh,
Stock
Jim
up
Bob.
to Jim Bob.
Hey, Jim Bob's stock, it plummeted about 5 years ago. He was, poised to be one of the hot names in head coaching searches, and then just fell off the market. So kudos to him for getting back to Indianapolis, and they had a good football game and got it done. Titans did not. It's going to be a tough couple of weeks ahead, guys, and it's going to be a tough couple of podcasts, I got a feeling, after this. But thanks to Charles Davis for joining us, Blaine and Terry. You guys, make sure to visit TitanInsider.com for their full coverage from yesterday's game and continued coverage throughout the week. This is the Tennessee Pro Football Podcast. I'm Chris Yao on Main Street Media TV saying so long. Have a great day.